Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and wow, we got another fantastic show. But first, before we get to that, I hope everybody really enjoyed this weekend and summertime just jumped on us, and we wow, it's gonna be a long summer. In many places, it's gonna be a hot summer. But I tell you what, we all are going to enjoy this summer. So wherever you're watching this show from, hey, hello, welcome aboard, though, because we got a great one today. But I can't even start the show without always talking to this absolutely wonderful executive producer and co-host, Dr. Michelle Cooley. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Like I was telling you before, it's hot here in Texas. It is over 100. I mean, this is normal, so it's going to be over 100 for a while. I was telling you that when I got in my car that it was 114 degrees, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So drinking lots of water, AC's on, we are fine, but everything's going good. This has been a great weekend. And I'm excited about the show today. One of our favorite guests is coming back. He's kind of like an honorary guest on the show. So I won't even refer to him as guest. I'll just refer to him as family.
He is family. We talking about Jordan Colbert. But I tell you, I'm in California, and it's probably about 75, 80 degrees here. So I'm just enjoying the temperature. I'll be back there, Michelle. I'm gonna wait on it to cool down a little bit before.
Waiting for months.
I am excited about the show as well. So Michelle, can you do the honors and tell our viewers and our listeners the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this absolutely fantastic guest of ours?
Oh, most definitely. So the title of today's show is called Accessibility. What's good for some is good for all. And we're having a conversation with assistive technology professional, Yale University's Associate Director of the Student Accessibility Services, author and published audiobook producer, Jordan Colbert. We're going to talk about exactly what is accessibility and learn about the difference between general accessibility and accessibility for those with disabilities. We're going to learn about laws and policies regarding those with accessibilities and disabilities and discuss some ways that those with disabilities receive accessibility support. And we're going to also learn what universal design is. So let's talk a little bit about Jordan. Jordan Colbert is from Mays Landing, New Jersey, a small town right outside Atlantic City, New Jersey. After his father left at the age of 4, Jordan lived with his mother and 2 of his 6 older sisters. Because of his mother's brief stint in jail and then later a significant cognitive disorder from illness, Jordan was raised by his oldest sister, who placed a strong emphasis on education. It was this that helped him propel to receive a degree in classical studies from the University of Pennsylvania and a master's in marriage and family therapy at the University of Southern California. Jordan did his clinical work in high schools and substance abuse clinics as a psychotherapist and as a research intern at the Mindset Institute in Los Angeles, California. After receiving his degree, he then moved to supporting students with disabilities through the use of technology at USC. He is credentialed as an assistive technology professional by RESNA and serves as the Associate Director of the Student Accessibility Services for Yale University. He presented at multiple national conferences on the importance of assistive technology for individuals with disabilities and consulted with companies to increase their digital accessibility presence and products. He produced 2 audiobooks, Up from the Bottom, a memoir by Isaac Ford Jr., and Country Boy, City Boy, Journey That Ain't Over Yet by Dr. James Cooley. He also was a contributing author in A Black Man's Point of View, Mind, Body, and Soul, that was just released June 6th. So please welcome back to the show, Jordan Colbert.
How you doing, Jordan? Man, it's always a pleasure just even chatting with you, man, and having me on the show because you bring so much insight and so much inspiration to our listeners and our viewers, man. So how you been? How you been?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be back. I just came off of a nice little cruise, so this is a good way to start Monday and get my feet back into doing some work.
Oh man, yeah, man, we love cruises, and Michelle and I are thinking about doing one real soon in the next couple of months. So so
you definitely should.
Oh man, always, always. John, can you tell our viewers a little bit more about you, how you develop all the talents that you have and the expertise that you're doing. So you do so many things, man. You write books, you produce stuff, and plus you're in the healthcare field and also the educational field. So can you give them a brief synopsis how your journey led you to what you're doing today?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely been a journey. I'll say that. So as Michelle said, I started my life right outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey. It's a very interesting environment because there's pockets of wealth and there's pockets of significant poverty. And coming from that background, even when I was in high school, a lot of my peers were some wealthier individuals. So I really got to see both sides of life growing up because as an economically depressed environment, we often I often felt like I was an imposter among them, and so that journey really took me to a lot of different places, mentally, physically, but I really stuck to education. As Michelle said in my bio, my sister really pushed that, and it's what really pushed me to get through a lot of the things that I had to get through. And once I really got into the higher levels of education with college, going to University of Pennsylvania, I got to see all different types of people, and I got to see all different types of wealth. I got to see stuff that I never thought I would ever see, and it really showed me that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter, where you're from. Everybody struggles with some things, and really having a support system can help. And so that really pushed me to start to figure out ways that I can help others, which I guess, took me to the mental health field and really took me to where I am now. Because growing up in my generation, technology really mattered. And so putting that together with my skill set and what I learned before, it's really taken me to new heights and learning how to do a lot of different things all at once that can really support everybody.
Man, you're doing a whole lot of things, especially and when it comes to authoring books now. You know that you're part of a Black Man Point of View, Mind, Body, and Soul that went number one bestseller, number one release. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about your portion in it because I thought it was extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, it was very it was very fulfilling to be able to get an opportunity to talk about my experience and talk about my contribution. And so I really, when I like to write things, I like to think of it in a very metaphorical sense. And so talking a little bit about my point of view from the point of view of what's actually in my heart and how my heart experienced this growing up, it was a phenomenal experience to really just like reflect and think about the experiences that I had as a Black man, as a biracial man here in America, and what that really entailed. And so it was just a phenomenal opportunity. And then the fact that it became a bestseller really cemented my experience with it, because it shows that it actually matters and that others really care about getting to understand, everybody's experience and the experience specifically of a biracial Black man like me.
Wow. So George, let's just change it a little bit. With your background in philosophy and mental health, how did that propel you to do what you're doing now at Yale, where you are directing and running a program and helping others out?
Yeah, well, it's definitely an interesting combination. I'll say that. What I really like to tell people is that my background in philosophy helped me think about the way people, are. Think about what life is. Think about what's a good life, what's a difficult life. Just ponder these type of questions and really get a clarity of thought on the world around us. And I would say also, then that leads into mental health, because it's the way we all think about things and the way we're all experiencing life. And just kind of combining them can really gave me some idea of like how I could help and what it is about helping and what it is about individuals that can really push them to help, or to get the help, or to, get to a level of treatment that they want. And so thinking about that, though, was working with students in a high school, and I realized doing the mental health one-on-one is great. It's very enriching and it helps the individual. But with philosophy, I wanted to do bigger things. I wanted to impact more people. And so, working in a college setting, in a higher education setting, I realized that I could help people a lot better by creating access. So this means, allowing people to get to different levels of their education, to get through it without having to face the barriers that pop up. And then they can turn around and be emblems of success. They can, tell others, these are the supports that helped me. And it really just becomes like a pay it forward system. So it was something that was great. And like I said, I grew up with technology, and they kind of just threw me in there and said, hey, do you know how this works? And I said, no, but I'll figure it out. And within a couple of weeks, I had already figured out more than like what my boss was doing at the time with this. So I really took it and ran away. And now technology is the future. So I like integrating it with all the stuff that I do.
Technology is the future, and it's going to continue to evolve and evolve even further. Now, Jordan, you talk about accessibility a lot, and that's part of the title of the show. Can you explain to our viewers and our audience what you mean by accessibility and why it's so important?
Yeah. So essentially, accessibility is the ease that people can access either a product, a service, or information. And so what that ease of access is, how readily available is it? So if I was to try and get information about maybe, a business, or to find this show, how easy is it for me to find that and navigate that? Usually this is in the context of disability when it's talked about as the whole field, but there is a general level of accessibility that applies to people who don't have disabilities. And so it's an important all-encompassing field, but primarily it's about making sure that people can get to things, or get to, learning, or just as easily get to anything, that is available to the general population.
Wow. So we're going to take a station break, but when we come back, I want to talk about accessibility and disability, and how the correlation of both of those go hand in hand. So wherever you're watching this at, if you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is go to the comments. You can ask Jordan any question that you might have, and I promise you we'll get you an answer. It's your life. We'll be back shortly after the break.
Get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. We got this absolutely fantastic guest, Jordan Colbert, who I think this is probably his 10th or 11th time uh, on the show, but he always brings so much knowledge and understanding to us. So we just love having you on the show, Jordan, because we always know you're going to bring it.
I appreciate that. I love it. It's important stuff to talk about. So happy to get this opportunity to talk to everybody. And I mean, hang out with you is great.
It's absolutely. And, we're talking about a very important topic today. We're talking about accessibility. But I want to talk about accessibility and disabilities as they go hand in hand. Can you explain to our viewers, you already talked about accessibilities. How does that go hand in hand with disabilities?
Yeah, so disability is a big field. It's a big, wide open umbrella in the sense that there are laws and policies around disability, but the general definition is any major condition or diagnosis that functionally limits somebody from being able to do a essential life task or essential like aspect of their experience. And so that may be something like visual disabilities, where somebody has difficulty seeing significantly to the point where they can't, navigate, or they may not be able to use a computer without assistance. Or it's also the traditional thought that a lot of people have of maybe somebody who uses a wheelchair or who may be missing a limb or something like that. And something that's important, though, that is really important for everybody to recognize is that mental health is also considered a disability because it can functionally limit you in doing a lot of things depending on the way that you're impacted by your mental health disability. So it's a big breadth of possibilities and diagnoses, but it's something that it really impacts your way of life.
So what's the difference between general accessibilities and for those with disabilities? It's general accessibility. What you mean by that?
Yeah, so general accessibility is basically like looking at how easy it is for anyone in the population to do a task or to find something. So this might be something like making sure there are multiple languages for your information. So if you're putting out a show, is there translations or is there like subtitles for people who may be learning new languages, so English as a second language? General accessibility also might, be how easy is it for somebody with glasses, which is, technically a part of disability, but because you have glasses, it's corrected. So the disability is not fully impacting you, but it might still be difficult for them to see font. So if you think of something like whenever somebody's written something down and maybe like 9-point font, it's so hard for anybody to see that. That's not generally accessible. But then it takes it a step further when it goes to accessibility for those with disabilities, because it's the little things that you may never actually think about. So something like, is your handout that you're giving out in print format, is there an electronic version of that for someone who may not be able to see? And is that electronic version set up so technology can work with it and be available? Another kind of thing is like, for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, and accessibility for them is making sure that there's captions or maybe a sign language interpreter that's available for making sure that there's ease of access with communication in that setting. And so they're the two different fields. It's like general accessibility is the big circle, and then accessibility for those with disabilities is the internal circle.
Yeah. So do you have any statistics for, disabilities in communities?
Yeah.
And, let's talk about that a little bit.
I mean, the statistics are actually very interesting. The CDC just put out new statistics around this, but 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability. And that can be in a lot of different areas. Like I said, that can range from mobility. So using, a mobility assistance such as a wheelchair or a power chair or a cane. There can also be things like cognition. So difficulty with thinking about, staying on task or being concentrated for a long time. So things like learning disabilities and neurodiversity. So ADHD, learning disabilities. This is also where mental health can fall in there. And so these areas of disabilities really can impact life. But aside from that, some important statistics are that, people with disabilities are at a much higher risk for a lot of different things. So, for instance, a person with a disability is almost twice as likely to have obesity as a person without disability. And this can be for a lot of different reasons, such as like 1 in 4 people with disabilities don't have access to healthcare or have gone without meeting, with a healthcare professional because of the cost. Because these things are very significant, and disabilities can impact, the amount of work that you can do or the amount of work that's available. And discrimination still exists. So there are definitely areas where people are discriminated against and they can't prove it, but it's causing them difficulty with getting a job or something like that. So these statistics are really astounding because it does happen to affect such a large portion of the population.
And so, are there ways that people can receive accessibility, people with disability receive certain accessibility from the communities, from the government, from uh, restaurants, and other type of things? Let's talk about that.
There's a lot of ways that people can receive some support for this. So in many of the cases, it depends on kind of like your age level. But if you're like a kid, a minor under 18, there's a lot of different things that your parents can apply for. So whether that's government assistance with, getting a technology, so maybe getting a wheelchair or getting the appropriate technologies that might be needed for different different things that you're doing, such as like communicating, and also making sure that there's accommodations in like the K through 12 elementary school system. Now if it's more of like an adult, then there's different ways that you can get supports, but the important thing is that you have to take those active steps. So that in itself can sometimes be a barrier because things aren't always accessible. So thinking about if you have a food related chronic illness or an allergy, you have to ask for something like that, or you have to speak up when you go into a restaurant just to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself or, cause yourself to be sick because of the lack of accessibility. And then, in higher education, there's a bunch of options for that there too. It's something that, I deal with in my day job when I'm working for Yale. But there's also areas of accessibility support for things like, employment. So at your job, where they have to make sure that an accommodation exists that doesn't fundamentally alter what you're supposed to do. So something, that is able to be added as a support that still allows you to complete your job efficiently and effectively. And in many cases, there's a way to figure out how to support somebody with an accommodation need that still falls within those guidelines. So there's a lot of different ways to get support for these type of things.
Are there any laws and policies that surrounds that have to be enforced as it relates to accessibility?
Yes, there is. The United States government has actually put in a series of policies. So coming out of the civil rights movement, there was the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which really set the stage for the rest of the disability laws that came out. And this was the first time where it was explicitly codified that anything receiving public or federal funding that is available to the public needs to make sure that they are accessible. And whether that's physically in the built environment, making sure there's ramps and things like that to get inside your buildings, but also there's like access aspects of this for employment. And the laws actually go further. From 1990, there was a law called the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was landmark in preventing discrimination. It was something that said you can't discriminate against people with disabilities because they need an accommodation. It actually has to be proven that with an accommodation, they're not qualified to do the job. Or to be in the educational setting or something like that. So it really protected people from disability discrimination. And then under Obama, there was even further push for expanding what disability really, what constituted as a disability and what enabled people to get more support for their disabilities to make this world itself a little bit more accessible. Now there's some more nuanced ones in there that help with like technology, that help with, obtaining resources. Fair Housing Act, all these type of things were pretty important for the people with disabilities in the field of accessibility.
Is there anything our audience should know about accessibility in case they have a disability?
Yes. The most important thing is to know, A, you're not alone. You're not going through these type of things alone. It may feel like, my doctor doesn't know too much about this, or there's no one else that has this. The most important thing to recognize is that there are similarities across disabilities and you're not alone. And there are a lot of people that want to offer support, and there's a lot of support out there. It's just really making sure that you're taking advantage of the opportunities that are given. So this way you receive the support, because, you're not dumb. You're not unable to, participate in the world around you. There's help out there that can put these supports in place for you to be able to succeed.
Where is some of the places, and I know we're going to talk about this a little later, that people that might be curious right now, that they can look up relatively easy to get more information on accessibilities, especially related to disability?
Yeah, so there is the American with Disability Act.gov, so the ADA.gov. That's a great website for information about what resources exist and what the Americans with Disabilities Act really does for the government aspect of it. Then there's also, if you're looking for jobs and job access, there's this thing called JAN, which is the Job Access Network, and it can be found from JAN.org. And so they help with providing employment resources and employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So those are just a couple of places that you can check to really get that type of support out there.
Oh, yeah. So we've got to take a station break. But this is such a great topic to be talking about, because I know it's affects, just like you mentioned, 1 out of every 4 Americans in some type of way or other. So we're going to come back and pick it up again. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments, ask any question that you might have, or just join in on the conversation. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll be back shortly after the break. Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. And as you see, my absolutely magnificent, wonderful guest is doing it again like he do always when he on the show. Always giving us this great education that we all need to know about, not just for ourselves, but for others as well, because we run across people in our family, and we run across people in our communities all the time with disabilities, and there's certain things that we can do to help out, certain policies and procedures we need to follow, especially if you're an employee, employer. I mean, certain things in your business that, especially in the restaurant industry, certain things like that need to be in place to be able to meet the ADA standards. So hey. We're going to get back to all of these great things. And Jordan, the topic of the show you talked about was, no, we ain't talked about yet, but what's good for some is good for all. Can you tell our viewers and listeners why you chose that title and explain a little bit about it?
Oh, yeah. So it's something that I like to say whenever I really think about disability and think about all the innovations that have come for people with disabilities. So what I really mean over that is that the ideas that some of these access barriers that get removed because of people with disabilities actually benefit the entire population. So, just a very simple thing to think about is like the idea that curb cuts. So, the little dips that happen on the street, so people with disabilities or who may be using a wheelchair, are able to get up on the curb. That's something that helps everybody walk up the curb. Most people like to use that instead of stepping off the curb. It prevents you from, tripping. It's a very useful development, and there's some other things that are really good for the whole population. People might really be thinking about some things like, oh, I just use this. Like, think of the idea of Siri or AI, assistants that can really help with setting reminders that are voice activated. These are all things that really help those with disabilities and were invented to make people's lives easier, but it makes everyone's life easier. And so the idea that what's good for some people with disabilities helps the rest of us as well just live a more seamless and efficient life.
You're absolutely right. And you just mentioned this hot topic right now, AI. And AI is helping a lot of people with a lot of different things. And I don't know how far that's going to go. AI seems like it might be becoming human.
Yeah, it's a question there for sure. It's a benefit and a boon, I'll say that.
Yeah. So in what ways do you see AI helping? I mean, could potentially helping out even more with disability and accessibilities?
Yeah, so it's really helpful in a couple of different ways. And it's funny, I just had a recent conversation with somebody who was telling me, their dad has had a learning disability their whole life. And he's really, really, competent and high up executive in a museum. And the problem is that he's really struggles with writing because of his disability. And, in the past, people would have to go out and maybe have to find a ghostwriter or something like that to put their ideas down on paper. But the creation of AI, so things like ChatGPT, he can really put in the information in a way that he can present it. And then ChatGPT can then write it for him. Same way a ghostwriter would, but it's now more accessible because he doesn't have to pay for those type of things. He's using this AI system to help benefit him with those deficits. Now, there's a bunch of other ways, like I mentioned, Siri, Google, Amazon, they do automated processes for So if you have a disability that might be cognitively impairing your memory, they can set up reminders, or they can remind you, hey, you're running out of paper towels. Might be a good time to call for more paper towels, or hey, your medication is almost done. Do you need to renew this medication to keep going? And so it's just those little things right there that AI really helps to automate and takes off of the human mind. It takes off of the human plate that they have to do. So it can be a huge benefit, and we'll see where it goes and how intrusive and invasive it becomes. But right now, there's a lot of promise for AI.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle and I looked into it the other day, just to see what it was all about, and it's amazing. You just tell it to do something, and it's give you a whole book report or something. So
Yeah, it's not always right. It's not always right, but that's the important thing is, like, it's trying, and that's why there's still a human involved in it.
But it seems like it's learning the process. As you tell it to do something, it learns a little bit more and more and more, and that's what we have to do as humans. Have to continue to learn, continue to add on, so hey, Jordan, as a subject matter expert on assistive technology, can you tell our viewers and our listeners exactly what is that?
Yeah, so assistive technology is really any tool or piece of equipment that allows somebody with a disability to independently live their life. And so that comes in very different ways. Sometimes there's 3 different fields that we like to really label them. So it's low tech, medium tech, and high tech. So something that's assistive technology that's low tech, if you've ever seen a pencil with a pencil grip, those little things that you put your pencil on, that's a low tech solution to help those who have difficulty with grasping things keep their grip on their technology or on their pencil as they write. Then there's stuff like medium technology, which might be something that's a little bit more, tech based. So it could be something that's like a grip. So some of those reacher objects where somebody might have to pull, a trigger and it opens and closes to grasp something. That might help somebody with a disability who has difficulty reaching or who has difficulty bending with mobility aspects of it. And then there's stuff like high tech, which is ideas of like, creating accessible books for people. So audiobooks, that's a high tech solution, because if you have a difficulty or a disability related to reading, you can now listen to the material while you read, which, builds skills. Or if the skill is very difficult and audio is a better way of learning for you, the audiobook then allows you to access this whole new world of information in a different way that you may have, shied away from before because of the difficulty with having to complete or read through something.
So can you tell us a few technologies that you find to be most helpful for people with or without disabilities, and how is that kind of changing communities and potentially the world?
There's so many, to be honest. So one thing that I mentioned, Google and Siri, but people don't recognize this, but that little, when you're highlighting something and press speak on your phone or on a computer, it seems easier for you because you're just listening to it. But that's a technology, that's an assistive technology called text to speech that was created. Or when you press the little microphone and you start talking and it writes it out for you, it's called speech to text. That's something that people are just using, as you're driving. It makes it easier for you to communicate people with that as you're driving. So you're not actually texting, having to look at the information. There's so many types of things like that. Just like the idea of night shift on computers and phones, where the color gradient changes to a warmer color. That's to protect your eyes, and for people who may have things like concussions or who may get migraine headaches, these type of filters, reduce those things. But it's better for everybody because it protects your eyes. Like I said, if you have perfect vision, it's still good for you.
You mentioned something earlier about university designs. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yes. So universal design is this idea that it's good for some is good for all in the practice of it. So, like I was mentioning, if you have curb cuts, people don't have to ask for assistance on getting into the curb, and it takes away the need for an accommodation. So if things like universal design is a restaurant that has different segments where they prepare their food, if that's possible, some areas that's their whole thing is a certain type of food. We wouldn't ask someone to go to a seafood place and say, okay, is there a way that you can accommodate somebody who's allergic to seafood? No, but universal design would be in an area where people don't have to ask for an accommodation. So, like, your website is accessible not because somebody complained about it, but because it was already built that way. Or, elevators, you put an elevator in your building no matter what because it's useful and easy. And somebody doesn't have to ask for assistance with, moving a presentation or moving something to a different room that is on the first floor. So, just, the idea that if it's built with everybody in mind, it's designed universally for everybody to be using it.
That's well explained, because I was trying to figure out what you meant by that. But those were some interesting facts that you was talking about, because it will help everyone out, everyone, and make life easier for everyone. We're going to have to take another break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to tackle this some more, and we're going to finish this up. If you want to be part of this great conversation, all you have to do is just go to wherever you're watching it at. Ask any questions that you like. As you see, Jordan will get you an answer. It's your life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll be back shortly after the break.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Welcome back to It's Your Life. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley. And of course, I call this guy the professor already because he's always teaching and educating others. Yeah. So
One day I'll officially be a professor.
oh, you will be. There ain't no doubt about that in my mind. So Jordan, is there anything coming out? I know we talk about technology and we talk about things that's going to help accessibility and disability. Is there anything down the pipe that that might be coming out that's going to even benefit these communities a lot more?
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of technology that's coming out. There's always like revisions to the laws being looked at. That's always something that's really important, as people look at the different policies and how time has changed. But one thing that's coming down the pipeline that I'm pretty excited for is, how like virtual reality is becoming a thing. Well, some schools are deciding to use it as a virtual university. So that's not something that, I'm sure of which schools are doing, but I know that there are a couple of schools that are partnering with Meta to start to try and make this a more accessible way for people to get education. So things like, think about this. If you were able to just put on a headset and instead of having to go to the classroom or to read about a speech like, the Emancipation Proclamation, you can actually be in a virtual reality experience of watching Abraham Lincoln give that speech. And if you can't, travel to the university or something like that, that's something that you can sit back and still learn about. You can still be a part of a conversation or a part of a classroom if it's, produced on the metaverse. So that's something that's pretty cool coming down the pipeline. And I think, that's people should really look into that and see how that's going to help change the world of accessibility, at least in educational senses.
Oh, are you talking similar to kind of like the goggles and stuff?
Yep.
That is interesting, right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's something. I mean, I personally, as my background with philosophy, I would love to be able to put on a headset and see Socrates talk again, or learn a little bit about Nietzsche, like just in the way he spoke and everything. So, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's awesome as well. So have it anything that we haven't covered that's major that you might have wanted to cover today in this great topic, or is something that we're going to add on to the next one because you will be back.
Definitely, I'll be back. I think, the one thing that I didn't really fully cover is the idea that mental health is a disability and people are eligible for support with mental health concerns. It impacts your life on a day-to-day, experience. And so that's something to recognize. There's help out there, whether or not you're in treatment, whether or not you think you qualify. It's always good to just check it out. Nothing, there's no harm in asking what if you're eligible for something. And that's the important thing. Don't be afraid to ask if you have a disability, or if you know somebody with a disability. You can be out there, looking for resources to help them, because you never know. You could break your arm tomorrow and have a disability and need support. You could develop a chronic illness or something like that at any time. So you never know who's going to have a disability, who may already have a disability, and who needs support. So just knowing more about this, putting the information out there, and being a helpful person is something that's just so important for this field.
You mentioned mental health, which I think is a major, major issue today. What are some of the signs that people might want to recognize in people that are around them or family members that would kind of like indicate that that person might need to get some help? You got any signs that recommendations that we should be looking for? And I'm talking about even in ourselves as well, not just.
Yeah, there's a lot of signs that can show up. One of the biggest one is like a personality change, or like a change in the things that you like to do. So if somebody, typically is very reserved or something, and then all of a sudden they have wild bursts of energy. They're running around making millions of friends, making lots of plans, doing different things, kind of like, making impulsive decisions. That could be a sign that, something's going on with them. And on the flip side, somebody who's very outgoing, who all of a sudden starts to withdraw or isolate, or really starts to seem down with a depressed mood, or, a change in their daily activities. That's something to recognize. Another thing might really be, the decisions that you make. So sometimes it could be, have they started not just talking to themselves, but answering themselves, talking to people who are not there, talking about ideas of like, hey, I might be a religious figure. I might be the Messiah or something like that. Just those little comments are stuff that you really can listen to. And I think that's the biggest part, to really help people with mental illness and to find and support your peers, support yourself, is just listening and really paying attention to yourself and others in a way that matters, that you're intentional about it.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your business, Opticist XP, and what type of services do you offer?
Opticity XP is it's something that I really came up with a little while ago when I was starting to think of ways that I could help people outside of just like my official full-time job. And so with my expertise, Opticity XP, which kind of stands for making sure that people have the optimal experience with accessibility, with their life, with their, educations. And so something that we do is we create audiobooks, but we also consult on accessibility projects. So whether that's digital accessibility, whether it's accessibility for your company, and making sure that you as a company are able to meet ADA requirements, able to make sure that you're in compliance with a lot of the different things that are needed. But a big thing that we do is make books more accessible for people through the use of audio. So we work with authors. I've worked with you, JC, on a couple of projects, and it's something that really, it's my way of helping others through a business standpoint.
How could people or authors or anyone get in touch with you if they want to chat with you and also enlist your help?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. I'm on Twitter. You can search my name, but my handle is @JoeCoATP. You can always shoot me an email. My email is the first letter of my name, so J-T, and then my last name, Colbert, @opticityxp.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And our website is launching soon, but it's also something that's another place that you can really reach out and try and follow us on. And I'm happy to help and consult with anybody that needs it.
Wow, man, I'm going to be reaching back out to you real soon once we get settled in, because I'm thinking about doing audiobook on our new release that we just had. So.
Oh, yeah.
But Jordan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and educating all of us, so that you got a standing invitation to my show anytime. So thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another absolutely fantastic show. But most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. Always dream big, think big, and be big at everything that you do. We'll see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. It's your life. We'll talk to you then.